spring of 1912, a massive ocean liner, the RMS Titanic, was prepared for its maiden voyage from Southampton, England to New York City. The ship, heralded as the largest and most luxurious vessel ever built, was the pride of the White Star Line. Designed to be unsinkable, with its advanced safety features and multiple watertight compartments, the Titanic attracted attention from the wealthiest members of society as well as hopeful emigrants seeking a new life in America. And aboard the ship were passengers from all walks of life. In first class were some of the richest and most influential people of the time: John Jacob Astor IV, Margaret Molly Brown, and Benjamin Guggenheim, among others. They enjoyed lavish meals, opulent cabins, a swimming pool, Turkish baths, and fine dining provided by skilled chefs. The ship was a floating palace, and in second class, professionals and middle-class families traveled in comfortable, well-appointed cabins with access to a library and an enclosed promenade. Meanwhile, third-class passengers, many of them emigrants from Ireland, Scandinavia, and Eastern Europe, were confined to the lower decks. Though far simpler, their quarters were still cleaner and more comfortable than those of many other ships of the time. And Captain Edward Smith, a seasoned mariner nearing retirement, commanded the Titanic. He was trusted and respected, chosen to helm the ship on its maiden voyage due to his experience. Alongside him were a capable crew and officers, including First Officer William Murdoch and ship designer Thomas Andrews, who was aboard to oversee the ship's performance. And among the passengers was a young artist named Jack Dawson, who had won a third-class ticket in a poker game. On the docks in Southampton, he boarded the ship full of excitement and dreams. In contrast, Rose DeWitt Bukater, a young woman from a wealthy family, boarded the Titanic burdened by societal expectations and a loveless engagement to the arrogant industrialist Cal Hockley. Though Rose had material comfort, she felt stifled by the rigid world she inhabited, and the voyage began smoothly. The Titanic departed on April 10, 1912, and made stops in Cherbourg. The atmosphere aboard the ship ranged from joyous to formal. Passengers mingled, dined, and enjoyed the ship's entertainment. Rose and Jack met by chance when Jack intervened as Rose attempted to throw herself off the stern of the ship in desperation. Their unlikely friendship blossomed into a romance that defied class boundaries and social convention. And as the Titanic sailed farther into the North Atlantic, warnings of icebergs began to arrive via wireless telegrams. Several nearby ships, including the Californian and the Caronia, reported heavy ice fields and large bergs in the ship's path. However, these warnings were not taken with the full seriousness they deserved. Confident in the ship's capabilities, the Titanic maintained near top speed despite the potential dangers, and on the night of April 14, the sea was eerily calm, the sky moonless, making icebergs difficult to spot. At 11:40 p.m., a lookout in the crow's nest spotted an iceberg dead ahead. Despite efforts to turn and reverse the engines, the ship struck the iceberg on its starboard side. The collision ripped a gash below the waterline, flooding multiple compartments. Thomas Andrews assessed the damage and concluded that the ship would sink within a matter of hours, and panic and disbelief rippled through the ship. The crew began evacuating women and children first into the lifeboats, but the Titanic had lifeboat capacity for only about half of the people on board. Many boats were launched half up due to confusion and disbelief. Passengers in third class struggled to reach the boat deck, as barriers and language differences delayed their movement. Meanwhile, the band played on, trying to maintain calm, and Jack and Rose fought through the chaos, attempting to stay together. Jack was later wrongfully detained by Cal's valet, who planted a stolen diamond on him to separate him from Rose. Rose managed to rescue Jack, and they tried to find a way off the ship. Captain Smith, realizing the gravity of the situation, took a somber stance and stayed on the bridge. Thomas Andrews moved through the ship, urging people to wear life jackets and get to safety. And Molly Brown insisted on helping row her lifeboat and pleaded with the others to return for survivors in the water, but her appeals were mostly ignored. Many passengers and crew showed acts of heroism and humanity. Officers fired flares and tried to load the lifeboats as efficiently as possible. Engineers stayed below decks, keeping the lights and pumps running to buy more time. And, as the ship's stern rose into the air, the Titanic broke apart. Hundreds were thrown into the icy water, where hypothermia claimed many lives in minutes. A few lifeboats eventually returned to search for survivors, pulling several from the water. The nearby ship Carpathia, having received the Titanic's distress calls, steamed through the night to reach the survivors, arriving several hours later. April 10th, Southampton. The docks are alive with excitement. Thousands watch as passengers board the Titanic for her maiden voyage to New York. Among the elite, millionaires, nobles, industrialists, women in fur coats, and men with pocket watches, steam pours from its funnels, crowds cheer, and the ship glides into the open sea. For a few days, life on board is enchanting. The rich dine on caviar and champagne. There are orchestras, reading rooms, and moonlit strolls on the upper deck. Below, third-class passengers dance to fiddles and pass around stories and songs. And one evening, Rose runs to the stern of the ship, overwhelmed by her life's trajectory. She climbs the rail, intending to leap, but Jack, wandering nearby, sees her. He talks her down with calm humor and honesty. He's nothing like the men she's known. She laughs for the first time in weeks. And Sakimanitose, they begin to meet in secret. Jack shows her the ship's underworld, the lively third-class quarters, the freedom of drawing, the wildness of real living. Rose shows him the art galleries and the formal dinners, dragging him into the world he was never meant to enter. Their love grows fast and deep, a spark between two people who never should have met, and but danger lurks in the background. The ship receives repeated iceberg warnings. The captain, pressured to maintain speed, pushes forward through the cold Atlantic night. It's calm, too calm. No moon. The sea looks like glass. At 11:40 p.m., on April 14th, a shape appears in the darkness. And an iceberg. A desperate turn. A shuddering impact. And at first there's disbelief. The ship barely seems to have changed, but down below steel plates have buckled. Water floods in, silent and merciless. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, inspects the damage and realizes the truth. The Titanic is going down, and the officers begin evacuating women and children into lifeboats. There are only enough for half the passengers. Confusion spreads. Some lifeboats leave half full. The band plays to calm nerves. Many believe the ship can't possibly sink, but the tilt becomes more visible. The cold creeps in. Panic sets in, and Jack and Rose try to stay together, but Cal intervenes. Jealous and furious, he has Jack falsely accused and locked in a room below deck. Rose, torn between comfort and courage, chooses Jack. She fights her way through flooding hallways and rescues him just as the water rises to his neck, and the two run through the chaos, dodging collapsing ceilings and panicking crowds. Cal tries again to manipulate Rose, offering safety if she leaves Jack. She refuses. They find a lifeboat. Jack urges her to get in, but she jumps off at the last moment, unwilling to leave him. And as the ship tilts steeply, passengers and crew brace themselves. Some pray, others scream. A few leap into the black water. Captain Smith remains on the bridge. Andrews helps passengers with life jackets, quietly resigned. Officers fire flares into the night sky. Somewhere, a mother sings to her children. Two old lovers lie down in bed together, waiting for the end. And the Titanic splits in half. The stern lifts high, then crashes back down. Jack and Rose cling to the rails as the ship rises, then plunges into the sea. They are thrown into freezing water, gasping for breath. They find a piece of wooden paneling floating nearby. Jack helps Rose onto it. He clings to the edge, his body already numbing, and around them hundreds cry out. But one by one, their voices fade. And hours later, a ship appears on the horizon. The Carpathia. Lifeboats are pulled aboard. Survivors stare into the cold dawn, silent and shattered. Rose is found barely alive, her lips blue, her body trembling. She gives a false name. She slips away unnoticed, holding Jack's memory like a flame. Jack's lips are turning blue. He keeps his focus on Rose, holding the edge of the floating panel with all the strength he has left. She's trembling, barely able to speak, but she's alive. Around them, the sea is scattered with debris, overturned chairs, suitcases, and bodies floating eerily silent. The stars above shine cold and indifferent, and the cries have mostly stopped. Somewhere, a lifeboat debates turning back. One voice pleads, Molly Brown's. She urges the rowers to return, but others fear being swamped. Time slips by. The silence becomes unbearable. Rose tries to keep her eyes on Jack, speaking softly, barely audible over the creaking of distant wreckage. And in the lifeboats, children sob quietly. Women clutch each other, some still in evening gowns, others wrapped in blankets. Man stares at the horizon, whispering a name. Cal sits stiffly in another lifeboat, hair matted, jaw clenched. He stares at the water, not speaking, not crying, just watching. And back in the freezing water, Jack begins to fade. He looks up at Rose. His breath is shallow, but he's still trying to keep her awake, asking her to promise she'll survive. Her eyes are locked on his, wide and terrified, but she nods. She holds his hand. The sea around them is a graveyard, motionless, save for the quiet lapping of waves. And far off, a whistle echoes, thin, distant, but real, a light, a silhouette. Slowly, the RMS Carpathia approaches. The first rays of dawn begin to stretch across the sky, casting pale gold over the water. The lifeboats begin to signal. Crewmen on the Carpathia peer into the water with binoculars, their faces grave. And the rescue begins. Lifeboat after lifeboat is hauled in. Children are passed up, wrapped in heavy coats. Women are lifted gently, dazed, many in shock. A nurse offers warm broth. An officer takes names. But many passengers don't speak. They simply stare, some weeping silently, some too numb to register what's happened. And still floating in the water, Rose lifts her head. Her voice is raw. She looks at Jack, and searchlights begin scanning the water. A man with a whistle is pulled into a boat. A few others, barely alive, are found clinging to debris. Most are already gone, and the wooden panel creaks. Rose tries to shake Jack awake. Nothing, and she looks around. A whistle floating nearby. She forces herself to move, slipping into the water with a gasp. Her limbs barely work, but she swims. She grabs the whistle with frost-bitten fingers and blows with the last breath in her lungs. Once, twice, again, and a lifeboat turns. The crew hears it. The oars stop. A flashlight sweeps over the water, and the boat pulls closer. Voices calling out. Rose can't respond now. She's too weak, but someone sees her, barely afloat, eyes half closed, clinging to the wreckage with the last spark of will, and arms reach down. A voice shouts for a blanket. The water is left behind, and the lifeboat begins rowing back toward the waiting ship. Around them, the sea glimmers faintly as the sun finally breaks above the horizon. Smoke still rises from the spot where Titanic went down. Lifeboats crowd close together as the Carpathia looms ahead, crew lowering ladders and ropes.